Good day, everyone. Today we will be going to discuss about formalism and new criticism. Formalism and new criticism are two major literary approaches that emphasize the analysis of literature based on the text itself. Both approaches reject interpretations that rely on the author's biography, historical background, or the reader's emotions. Instead, they focus more on language, structure, and literary techniques to discover meaning. These approaches help establish literary criticism as a more objective and systematic field of study. Let's begin with the formalism. Formalism emerged in the early 20th century, particularly in the 90s, and originated in Russia through a group known as the Russian Formalists. This approach was developed in response to criticism that focused too heavily on the author or social conditions rather than the literary work itself. Formalists believe that a literary text should be analyzed as an independent artistic object. Formalism focuses on form and technique, examining how a text is constructed rather than what it represents. Meaning, according to formalists, comes from the internal structure of the text, such as its language, plot, imagery, and organization. External elements like the author's intention, historical background, and reader's interpretation are intentionally ignored to maintain objectivity. Now let's move on to the key ideas of formalism. One key idea of formalism is that literature is a crafted artistic object. Formalists believe that literary works are created through deliberate techniques that distinguish them from ordinary language. Another important concept is defamiliarization, which refers to the process of making familiar objects or experiences seem strange or new. This technique forces readers to slow down and notice details they would normally overlooked. Formalists also emphasize how the text works, focusing on its literary mechanics. These include the plot, which refers to the organization of events, language, which includes word choice and style, imagery, which creates vivid mental pictures, and structure, which refers to how the parts of the text are arranged to produce meaning. Next, let's move forward to the key theorists of the formalism. The first is Viktor Shklovsky. Victor was a Russian formalist who introduced the concept of defamiliarization. He believed that everyday language become automatic and dull over time. Literature, according to Victor, it disrupts this habit by presenting ordinary experiences in unusual ways. Through this process, readers gain a renewed perception of reality. The next is Roman Jakobson. Roman Jakobson was a linguist who emphasized the poetic function of language. He argued that literature draws attention to how language is structured, not just what it communicates. Jakobson focused on sound patterns, syntax, and word arrangement. His work strengthened the relationship between linguistics and literary criticism. Next is Boris Ekenbaum. He helped systemize and clarify formalist theory. He promoted the idea that literature should be studied scientifically rather than emotionally. he also emphasized that the importance of analyzing literary devices and techniques. So his work helped formalism gain acceptance in academic circle. So now let's move on to the new criticism. So new criticism emerged in the mid 20th century, becoming especially influential from the 1930s to the 1960s in the United States. So like formalism, it rejects biographical and historical approaches to literary interpretation. So however, new criticism places stronger emphasis on interpretation and meaning. So this approach is known for close reading, a method that involves careful and detailed analysis of a text language, imagery, symbols, and structure. So new critics believe that a literary work is self-contained, meaning its meaning exists entirely within the text. So objective analysis rather than personal opinion is essential to this approach. So next is the key ideas of new criticism. So a major concept in new criticism is unity, which means that all elements of a literary work contribute to a single coherent meaning. So no part of the text is considered accidental or unimportant. So new critics also analyze literary complexity through irony, paradox, and ambiguity. So irony highlights contrasts between expectation and reality. Paradox presents seemingly contradictory ideas, and ambiguity allows multiple meanings to exist simultaneously. So new criticism also identifies two interpretative errors. So the intentional fallacy refers to the mistake of using the author's intention to determine meaning. So while the affective fallacy refers to judging a work based on the reader's emotional response. So both are rejected to preserve objectivity. So next is the key theorist of new criticism. So first is John Crow Ransom. So he coined the term new criticism and promoted close reading as the proper method of literary analysis. So he argued that literary study should focus on the text itself rather than the external influences. So Ransom emphasized discipline and objectivity in interpretation. So his work laid the foundation for the movement. So another key theorist of new criticism is Clint Brooks. Clint Brooks emphasized unity, irony, and paradox as essential elements of literature. He believed that meaning emerges from the interaction of opposing ideas within a text. Brooks argued that tension and contradiction enrich literary meaning, so his work helped define close reading as a central critical practice. So next is W.K. Winsat. So he introduced the concept of the intentional fallacy. He argued that author's intention is irrelevant to interpreting a literary work. So according to Winsat, meaning is embedded in the text itself. His ideas reinforce the objective principles of new criticism. So the last one is Monroe C. Beardsley. So in collaboration with Winsat, he developed the ideas of intentional and affective fallacies. He argued that emotional reaction should not determine literary meaning. So Beardsley emphasized logical and text-based interpretation. His contribution strengthened new criticism's theoretical foundation. So now let's move forward to the similarities and differences of the formalism and new criticism. So Let's first tackle the similarities. So first, so first, both formalism and new criticism are text-centered approaches that focus solely on the literary work. So they analyze formal elements such as language, structure, imagery, and technique. So both aim for objective analysis and reject personal interpretation. So external factors like author biography, historical context, and readers' response are excluded. So now let's move on to the differences between the two approaches. So let's start from the formalism. So formalism primarily focuses on structure and literary devices, emphasizing how literature is constructed. So it is more concerned with technique and form. Always remember, it is more concerned with technique and form. On the other hand, new criticism focuses on meaning and unity. It focuses on meaning and unity. It uses close reading to interpret how all elements of the text contribute to a single coherent meaning. So, formalism and new criticism both emphasize objective, text-based literary analysis, making them foundational approaches in literary studies. So formalism highlights structure and technique, while new criticism emphasizes meaning, unity, and close reading. So together, these approaches shape modern literary criticism and influence how literature is analyzed in academic settings.
And I guess that would be all. Thank you for watching.